Okay, well, welcome to Crypto for Christians. Our mission on this channel is to reach Christians with the message of this developing technology called blockchain, and open up the mysteries of cryptocurrency, a very rapidly developing technology. My name is Alex. I'm a crypto enthusiast, and my co-host is Pastor Rick, a Christian pastor for a long time now. Rick, how long have you been a pastor?
It's been, let's see, I guess it's going on 10 years now.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've been a crypto enthusiast for years, and I've benefited from it. And Rick and I feel like cryptocurrency is exactly the kind of thing that many Christians will avoid. That, just the reputation around crypto, some of the things you might have heard about, people losing a lot of money or some of the greed that's involved. And we can definitely understand why. But we've also discussed how there's so many elements about the blockchain that potentially hold a lot of promise for Christians. It's really quite a fascinating new technology. The other thing, and one of the big messages that we're going to hammer home on this channel, is that this technology is very likely going to revolutionize the world as we understand it. It is going to be as disruptive as the internet. And we're going to go through all those specifics as it happens right here on this channel with a keen eye toward what are the implications of the changes that are coming for Christians. One of the things that you and I have talked about, Rick, is how it seems like Christians are often late adopters when it comes to technology. And, I know we talked about this before. What are your thoughts on some of that? How does that happen? Why are Christians late to the party?
Well, the first thing that obviously really is that we are supposed to be in the world, but not of the world.
Okay.
And so there's that line that all Christians have to draw between, what does that mean to them personally? What does it mean to them in terms of how they relate to other Christians and relate to the world? So I think that that is something that, we have to recognize that we are in the world. And so we do have to, of course, we're involved in the monetary system of the world. That's nothing new. That was the way it was in the time that Jesus walked the earth. And it's, I think that that's just a given. And that because this is going to be so disruptive, as you said, we have to stay ahead of the curve to be able to be aware as Christians of exactly how we can adopt the positive, good elements of this and be aware of the things that we may want to avoid. So that to me is why this show is going to be crucial for Christians to understand all of those things. And I know your depth and breadth of knowledge on those, like you said, the cryptocurrency and blockchain are, really solid. So we're going to be able to explore a lot of different avenues and ways that Christians can be involved, but also, recognize that they may want to limit involvement at certain times.
Right. Well, that's really well said, and when I think about it, when I think about some of the major innovations that blockchain is similar to, it really is similar to the invention of the printing press. And thank God, one of the first books, the first book ever really mass produced was the Bible, because there was some forward-looking Christian who was assertive enough to get involved with that technology. And that's not true for all technologies. But when you look at some of the success stories that Christians have had with new technologies, a visionary thinker, someone who realized that television was going to be the most impactful and influential medium of his time, of course, was Billy Graham. And to his wonderful credit, he really deserves a lot of credit for kind of paving the way for success for folks who want to utilize the power of the technology while avoiding the potential pitfalls. And there certainly are potential pitfalls that come with any technology. With television, of course, the risk would be that you'd become so famous and so rich that those things become corruptive influences. And I feel like Billy Graham is just a wonderful example of someone who, took on the technology full bore, just utilized it to immense extent. It's probably impossible to count the number of people that got saved as a result of Billy Graham's television evangelism. And so his use of this new technology. And at the same time, he was very assiduous and careful about making sure he was using the technology in a way where his Christian values were not compromised. I wish I could say that about all television pastors. I don't want to get myself into trouble in our first episode, but let's just agree that there probably is a way of using technology very effectively. And that's one of the big messages that I want to, create a conversation with Christians about is, can we get involved with cryptocurrency? Can we get involved with blockchain? Can we be a part of this transformation that's going to happen to the entire world and also maintain our Christian values? Better yet, what I'm most fascinated about, as you know, Rick, is the idea that we may even be able to manifest our Christian values through the use of blockchain. And so what I would like to do to start is just to talk a little bit about what blockchain is in relation to how we might accomplish some of the things we've talked about already in the show. And so for people who are new and for people who know exactly what blockchain is, I'm hoping this discussion will be very interesting to you. So for the absolute newbie, the person that doesn't understand what blockchain is, it is a new way of identifying, securitizing, storing, and transferring information and value. The same way you would transfer value with money, you can do that with blockchain technology also. Now, I'm going to go through each of these points really briefly, but the identification trick is really important. The identification trick is basically the trick that is accomplished by Bitcoin. Now, probably many of the people watching are Bitcoin enthusiasts, and that's also probably the most recognized name in blockchain is Bitcoin. And so what is Bitcoin and how does it fit into blockchain? Well, Bitcoin is to blockchain as email is to the internet, okay? Email is one thing that is facilitated by the internet. And by the way, there was a time when most of what was on the internet was just email. In other words, when the internet started, the vast majority of the internet was just email. And Bitcoin is the same way. Bitcoin takes advantage of the identification feature of blockchain such that they can transmit a piece of digital code and you can receive it and somebody can call it a Bitcoin. And you can use that cryptographic code to prove that it's an actual Bitcoin. It's not a pretend one. Somebody didn't manufacture this or make it up at home. It's not counterfeit. There's no way to counterfeit a Bitcoin because the information for it is connected to something that's stored somewhere else. So someone can instantly determine if what I'm calling a Bitcoin is fake or if I have an actual Bitcoin. And that makes for certain kinds of secure transactions. And you really can safely transfer value using Bitcoin because of its use of the identification purpose on the blockchain. However, this is just scratching the surface of what blockchain is actually capable of. So we talked about the identification, and now we can talk about the storage of information. I said it was a new way of storing information. Well, what's new about it? What's new about it is that information can be stored on a blockchain in a way that it can never be deleted or altered. And this is very new. People don't necessarily realize this. They think if they store something on their computer that it's pretty well stored, and it might be pretty well stored, but it's not unalterable, and it's not permanent, and it's not stored everywhere at the same time. The truth of the matter is, no matter where you store your information, unless it's on a blockchain, it actually is vulnerable to some type of attack. A good blockchain is capable of storing information in a way that it cannot be altered and it cannot be messed with retroactively. And by the way, the other thing about it is that it does this every single time. Sometimes you'll hear the word ledger used in a blockchain. And what that means is that when you do transact on a blockchain, whether you want it to or not, that transaction is stored on the blockchain. That information is there. Whether it's accessible to everybody is a separate question we can talk about when we start talking about securitization. A third feature is the securitization of information. And so there are ways of manipulating that on the blockchain so that some people have access to it and other people don't. And then, of course, transfer is pretty common for most people. They understand transferring information similar to an email or something like that. And of course, blockchain can do that. So what blockchain really is, in some ways, is a very simple idea. It's a ledger that keeps track of everything that's happening, and it can do the things we've talked about. It's not too different from an Excel spreadsheet to that extent. But what is hard for people to understand is the full implications of this. The metaphor that I like to use, Rick, is that of the internet. The internet is just computers talking to each other, right? And so, you know, that's all it is, really. All it is computers talking to each other. But in 1996, when we started hearing about, you know, computers talking to each other, it was really hard for the average person to imagine how this was going to change our entire world. It was going to be such a disruptive influence. And I have to say that because of the special features that blockchain has, it will be equally disruptive to our current world. Things that we take for granted now as being just the way they are will be very different once blockchain technology proliferates. And folks, this technology is growing at a very, very rapid pace. The development is happening 24 hours a day across the globe. And I do want to jump in and talk about some specifics of it. But there's a fifth feature of blockchain that I personally, as a Christian, find most fascinating. And that is the concept that blockchain technology is fundamentally decentralized. Now, what decentralized means is that when I do a cryptocurrency transaction on my computer, and I send it to, let's say I send you a Bitcoin, Rick, and you receive it, well, okay, great. But the thing about it is that transaction is stored on the blockchain. And you might understandably ask, well, where is the blockchain stored? And the true answer is kind of everywhere. It's all over. There's not a single place where the blockchain lives. The blockchain lives essentially in all computers all the time. It's actually more complex and specified than that, but you can think of it that way pretty accurately, that it truly is decentralized. And what that means is that now that it's possible to run computer programs on decentralized decentralized platforms like blockchains, we don't need big companies running servers anymore. We don't need big governments running servers anymore. And in fact, the government of Ethiopia just started a program where all of their citizens will have access to banking services and medical records and school records, but there's no government computer system that runs it. They're storing that information on the blockchain. Now, I mentioned earlier that appeals to me as a Christian, and I'm going to come out with this. I'm going to take some risks, folks. I'm going to say something in front of a pastor that's sort of an opinion about Christianity and, frankly, Jesus himself. But it is that, you know, a lot of people don't necessarily realize that some of the most important innovations, you know, we talk about innovation. We've been talking about innovative technologies. We've been talking about television and the printing press. But the single greatest innovator of all time in human history, of course, was our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. There's no question about it. And now when I say he was innovative, well, he had a number of very important innovations, but one of them was that he decentralized religion. Most people don't realize that prior to the coming of Christ, if you wanted to pray to any particular god, the system, for example, the original Jewish system was that you would take your prayers along with some offerings to the rabbi, to the centralized temple, and the rabbi, those centralized folks, would make prayers to God on your behalf based on your ability to convince the centralized authority that you deserved such prayers. And boy, did Jesus put an end to that. He really let every person know that no matter where on the hierarchy, whether it's a religious hierarchy or a government hierarchy or a wealth hierarchy, he made it clear that every person was equal in God's eyes, and that in fact, each of us, including me, and every person watching this show, whether you identify as a Christian or not, according to Christ, you can pray to God yourself. You can make that prayer, and you have an individual relationship with God, a decentralized relationship. Now, do you agree with this perspective, Rick? I feel a little self-conscious sharing these ideas in front of a Christian pastor. What do you think about the notion of Jesus as being the original decentralizer?
Well, Alex, I know we've discussed this type of thing before, but I will definitely agree with you that how you described the transition and the shift is exactly what took place when Jesus was on the earth and after his resurrection. Really, the interesting thing about that is that the religious leaders, the authorities at that time, definitely did not want that to happen. They really weren't given a choice, obviously, but he came in and in essence said, okay, you guys, are running this system. We can talk about the time he went into the temple and overturned the money changers' tables. Basically, you can just imagine scattering coins and everything all over the place, just disrupting that, saying, okay, this is not the right thing. The idea was not to have the temple be a place of commerce, and but they had turned that into that, and the reason really was because, like you brought up, people would bring their sacrifices, and if they were traveling a long way to get to the temple, they may not be able to bring their sacrifice with them, the correct number of goats or lambs or doves, whatever it was they needed. So they would bring their money, and then they would exchange that and be able to purchase something for their sacrifice. And other things I'm sure went into that. But what Jesus was trying to show was that the idea was that every person should be able to come before the Lord with their sacrifice and not have to be, in essence, having that be a commerce type of transaction. Now, what we realize is that after Jesus ascended into heaven and then the Holy Spirit came, that truly was the time when everything became decentralized, because the Holy Spirit has an influence on me, and he has an influence on you, and he has an influence on every single person on this planet, whether or not they know that. And that's something that's really important for everyone to recognize. And they can truly have a relationship with God. They do actually have a relationship with God, whether they think they do or not.
That's exactly right.
They may deny he exists, but they do actually have a relationship with him. They may not be participating in it, but they do have a relationship which is available to them. And that, to me, is one of the things that I think we don't hear often enough, is how important it is for everyone to seek God in their own way, to be able to have that relationship with him that they know is special and unique to them. And that's why the Creator designed us as unique individuals, so that we can each relate to him from that level of who we are. And so we don't need the temple system anymore. We don't need the sacrificial system after he made the ultimate sacrifice. Jesus did. And then, so that leaves us with that ability to literally approach the throne of grace, as the Bible says, and to be able to bring our offering of praise and thanksgiving and prayer to the Lord on our own. And to me, that is the absolutely the best privilege of being a Christian, because God's the ultimate authority figure in all of creation. So if I can go to him directly man, that's like, I don't have to go through anything. And so I think that's what you were getting at, was that the decentralization to where everyone can interact with the same type of effect.
That's
That's what
exactly correct.
blockchain.
That's exactly correct. And, and because of technological limitations of the past, it hasn't been possible to decentralize our societies. And in fact, even Christianity became very centralized for, well, frankly, hundreds and hundreds of years. Sometimes some of these years are referred to as the Dark Ages. And and by the way, the problem with centralization that Jesus pointed out, and that of course since then many other people have pointed out, is that when you centralize power and centralize wealth, it tends to lead to corrupt individuals. The old expression being, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And frankly, none of us are immune to the potentially corruptive influences of, concentrated or centralized wealth, centralized power. And that is one of the things that I'm looking forward to, talking with Christians about going forward, is if some of us are to become very wealthy because we're investing in blockchain technology at an early point in the process. And you can tell from the expression on my face that to some extent I've been a beneficiary of this already. The point is that, how can we be sure that we're continuing to live in accordance with our Christian values, which include, decentralization, egalitarianism, making sure we don't start thinking that we're above other people, keeping in mind that we're all equal in the sight of God as these things happen to us, even just as a consequence of us attempting to do good. Good intentions are not enough. We want good intentions. We want good practices that manifest our values. And so, so that's one of the reasons I think this is so important. And I'm so glad that we're creating this conversation for folks who want to tune in. So the decentralized aspect of blockchain, I think, holds immense promise for Christians who ultimately hold the value of decentralization, even if they've never used that word before. They hold this is actually one of the fundamental values that we cherish as Christians, is the decentralized aspect. And so, I don't want to criticize centralized entities just because they're centralized. And I say that because, so for example, one of the things you'll notice in Christianity, for example, is there has been a very large, what's called non-denominational movement. And I think that that's it's an effort to avoid the problems that can come with centralization, okay? And I think it's, by the way, a very well-intentioned and often very effective effort. But let's just say, for example, that you belong to a different church that's very centralized. I don't want to take issue with centralized churches. I don't want to take issue with any churches. If you're going to church, you're in good company here. And understand that, frankly, at some level, we've never had a choice before, but to rely on centralized entities to provide services, whether you're talking about religious services or banking services. There was no other way to do it because we didn't have the technology to support a decentralized approach. What's exciting about blockchain is that for the first time in human history, we have a way of accomplishing so many important things: communication, education, storage of value, transfer of information, all on a decentralized basis. And that's one of the things I definitely want to talk about with folks and help them understand that in many ways this is very, very consistent with our pre-existing Christian values. I probably shouldn't get too far into that before we talk about some more specifics related to blockchain, what it is and how it functions. So we talked about Bitcoin being email to the internet. It's just one feature, just one single small feature of a much, much larger whole. I'd like to talk a little bit more about that larger whole and where that can lead to, and where it will lead to, frankly, where it's already leading us to as human beings. And that is the concept of smart contracts. So Bitcoin was the first blockchain, and some very smart computer programmers got together, very fascinated by blockchain. And they built a blockchain called Ethereum as an experiment. And what they tried to do with this blockchain was get it to actually be able to run programs. So the same way that your Windows computer or your Macintosh computer can run programs on it, that's what makes it usable. They actually figured out a way to run programs on a blockchain. And it works. It works great. So these are applications that are no particularly different from the applications you currently run on your iPhone or on your Macintosh computer or on your Windows computer. They're just regular computer programs, but they run on a blockchain. They have a name. They're either called smart contracts. Sometimes they're also called dApps. That stands for decentralized application. And all that means is you don't need a Facebook server to have a way of storing your photos and sharing them with your friends and family. They can actually write a program that runs on the blockchain in a decentralized way so that no one has control over it. You know, you don't need Mark Zuckerberg censoring your communications or anything like that. And recently we've seen just how powerful the tech giants are. When they want to censor something, they can. Now, this is something that's very powerful about blockchain that I want to share now so that people really understand how exciting this could be for those of us who really value our freedom and value our freedom of religion, value our freedom of expression, our First Amendment rights that the country was founded on. What's very exciting is that although Facebook can censor what's on Facebook, and Google can censor what's on Google, and a news company can censor what's on their news feed, no one can censor the blockchain. You can't turn it off. You can't kill it. They banned it in China, so people aren't supposed to use it, but they actually can't prevent people from accessing it. And so there's no way to really shut it down. And this is a very, very exciting idea. So the power of this is so multitudinous, it's hard to imagine. But this is a very, very powerful thing that they can't turn off. In fact, there's a funny story, Rick, about a particular blockchain called ThorChain. It's a banking application, and you can lend and borrow money on it. You can transfer money into different currencies, different cryptos, different everything. Very powerful. And the Securities and Exchange Commission didn't really like it. And so they found the developers of ThorChain. They found the guys that wrote it, and they said, "Okay, guys, well, we don't like it. You know, we can't control it. We don't care for it. We need you to turn it off." And of course, they laughed because it's out of their hands. They built it. They burned the keys. They have no way of controlling it. It exists permanently. You'd have to turn off every computer in the universe, every computer on Earth, and in space to actually kill ThorChain. It can't be killed. And this, to me, is a very exciting development, just because I know that there are people that feel that they're no longer able to express freely. There are people who feel self-conscious about the fact that they are Christian or the fact that they have certain religious values or beliefs. And I feel like eventually there'll be wonderful opportunities for people to share religious ideas just the way you and I are now, but doing so on a decentralized application. I know we're on YouTube now, but eventually we'll probably be on a blockchain-based video sharing platform.
Okay. That's very exciting to me, and I want to just weigh in there that you can pretty much tell how important something is and how dangerous to centralized government something is if someone like the Chinese government is trying to control that and turn it off, and even in this case the SEC as well. That to me is a very interesting story. That right there to me says, okay, yeah, this is definitely something it's going to be useful to us. It's going to be something that's going to be empowering, because if that gives us the ability to create transactions which aren't necessarily monitored. Now, I know I should say, Alex, that I believe in this. I think it's a great thing, but is that not also open to misuse and even abuse? That just seems like the first thing I think of is, well, there are a reason we have certain laws in place, and we do like that. I mean, we do like the order that law brings to society, and that is something I preach about. The idea
Well,
that we do need laws, we do need order, and people following laws that are beneficial and good laws, it's a positive thing.
well,
So
this of
don't want
course,
we're not trying to follow laws, but if we can actually go in and use a platform in ways that the centralized authorities may not like, it's just like spreading the gospel. If there are certain countries where it is just impossible for churches to meet, and that is one of the things about Christianity. Is I did want to bring that up based on what I said earlier. Was there's no such, just because we do have a direct relationship with God, there's no such thing as a solo Christian, right? I
right?
mean, Christianity is based on community.
That's right.
It's based on meeting together and sharing our experiences together so that we can grow in our relationship with God and each other. And that is something that God wants for every Christian. He doesn't want people to just be off on their own and doing their own thing all by themselves, because you're not going to grow into be a truly mature person. Just like every person should be part of a loving, caring family that helps them to achieve their full potential. If that's exactly what Christians need as well. So I just wanted to make sure I said that before we went off too far, because I didn't want it to make it seem like, oh, I don't need a church, I don't need to be involved with other people. Churches are very valuable, and even having a certain hierarchy in the church is important too. There's God really established that. So I want to make sure that I'm clear on that. Don't want anybody to misunderstand where
Well,
my.
That's right. And I'm glad you brought those things up. And what I'm hoping we can do on this channel is talk very openly and earnestly about the potential for abuse and about the downsides of the disruption that's coming. One of the reasons that I think, we talked about this, one of the reasons it's so important for us to reach out and get Christians involved in this blockchain transformation that no one can control, as I just mentioned. This is coming, and it's going to be so important that we have Christians being substantial parts of the conversation and substantial parts of the development that happens. We want Christians participating in these changes as they occur, because there is potential for lawlessness and rogue problems and people with very negative values to create consensus and so on and so forth. Now, it's also interesting that blockchains are frequently designed to de-incentivize bad actors. So I don't want people to be filled with fear here. I really do believe that, if the right people get involved, the positive potential vastly outweighs the negative potential. But there probably will be negative consequences, like you're referring to now. And I want on this channel to be talking about all those things and what Christians can do to make the blockchain revolution a positive thing, something that God would smile upon, as opposed to something that creates way more negativity than positivity. So those are really, really important points.
That's great. Yeah.
So
right.
There's one last thing that I feel like we better touch on in our first show, and that just is that probably a lot of people tuned in expecting to hear about how they can make lots and lots of money and what they should be trading and all this kind of thing. And the way I'd like to introduce the markets around cryptocurrency to our Christian viewers is basically with a fundamental understanding, number one, that markets have a very hard time pricing innovation. And the result of that is that the crypto markets are a very volatile and crazy place. Now, there are ways of getting involved through markets with blockchain that may well turn out to be very positive. And I intend to cover all those things on this channel. Now, we are not financial advisors, and we don't give financial advice. We're here for informational and spiritual purposes only. So we'd love to educate you and invite you into a spiritual conversation about this developing technology. We will be touching on markets quite a bit. A lot of folks don't even know that there's technology underlying cryptocurrency. All they know is the markets, and we're not that way. We're much bigger picture than that. But we definitely will be addressing the markets as we go forward. We will be making reference to them. The biggest thing to understand is that they're fundamentally chaotic because markets have such a hard time pricing innovation. So the prices of these cryptos can fluctuate really, really dramatically, far outside the range of what their actual value to society would suggest. And it also has to do with how difficult it is to predict the future. Some of these blockchain technologies absolutely do have the power to change the world and will be adopted massively. And we'll be talking about specific projects that I like right now that may very well be good investments at some point. But for the beginning, please understand it is early in the blockchain revolution. You have not missed out. You don't need to worry about missing out and jump in with lots of money. We'll talk about some basic investment strategies that real financial advisors do give. It's pretty boring stuff. You put in a little bit of money, a little bit at a time. It's called dollar cost averaging, and it's just a way to make sure you don't get hurt in the markets, only putting in money that you can afford to lose, things of this nature, because these are very speculative investments when we think about investing. On the other hand, there probably are great opportunities out there. And so part of what we will do is reach folks who would like to possibly take some high risk investing money that they have and look into some of these very interesting and possibly very helpful programs. So, Rick, I think that's a great first show. I'm really glad we had the opportunity to do it. Do you have any parting thoughts that you want to leave our viewers with?
Yeah, Alex, I just wanted to say it has been a wonderful time. Enjoy talking to you about these kinds of things all the time. I'm very happy that we are getting a chance to discuss the spiritual aspects of something that is, some people see as just a currency or just some kind of a new way to, take part in commerce. I believe there really is a deep spiritual aspect to commerce in general that a lot of times people do miss. And, so I know some people speak about that. And so I'm glad we're having this opportunity on this channel to be able to discuss those things and to be able to bring this type of information to our viewers and be able to let them, get a little bit more ahead of the wave and not be left behind, because I do think that is the really crucial factor for why we're here, is so that Christians can approach all of these subjects knowledgeably and then also with the ability to understand why it's a good thing for them to get involved with them.
Thank you for those wonderful comments. And, I really look forward to hearing all about the spiritual aspects of commerce. I'm not sure I've ever really thought about that very much. And I definitely look forward to our next show. Personally, I can't wait for it. This has been very interesting talking with you about these matters. I want to encourage our viewers to please like and subscribe. And most importantly, if you know a Christian that you think knows nothing about blockchain, please share this video with them. So hit the share button and send this to every Christian you know. We want to make this into a movement. We want Christians to be a big part of this big technological innovation that's happening. And that's all we want. We don't want your money. We don't want contributions. We don't want anything at all other than to have you help us reach the most number of people to help them into what could be a very wonderful next chapter for humanity. So,
I'll just say
wonderful.
And thank you so much again, Alex. And God bless everyone. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time.